Oh, okay. All right. So he starts with the monopoly is a firm that is the sole seller of a product without close substitutes. And I'll just go over the characteristics of a monopoly. It's a sole seller. It has barriers to entry. The fact that you have barriers to entry means you could make or lose economic profit in the long run. So sole seller, barriers to entry, price maker, no close substitutes, and it advertises. Sole seller, barriers to entry, price maker, no close substitutes, and it advertises. Okay. Okay. Barriers to entry. All right. He talks about a single firm owns a key resource. And like he uses the De Beers owns most of the diamonds. So one way you could become a monopoly is you own a key resource. Right. Second is the government, and this is under government create. The government gives exclusive right, like they could give patents. All right. Now, the idea of a patent is, say, like it's an incentive for a drug company to spend millions of dollars in research, because if they then develop the drug, they have a patent on it for 20 years. So for 20 years, they have no competition. So a patent gives incentive for drug companies, and I'm just using them as an example, to go find a drug, because then they have like a monopoly on it for 20 years, which allows them to charge a higher price than if it was perfect competition. They're going to produce less, but they're going to make more profits. So again, if they're like have monopoly power, they're going to have higher prices, lower quantity, but higher profits. Okay. So that's why the patent's there, to give them an incentive. Otherwise, like a drug company won't want to invest $1 million, and then I invent the drug, and then Anthony just copies it, and I put all that money into research. So that's the second thing. So monopoly resources own a key resource, and then the second thing would be patents, and then the third thing is going to be your natural monopoly. And that's a single firm can produce the entire market quantity at a lower cost. And the reason for that is very, very high fixed cost. Okay. Now, in a natural monopoly, you'll have a downward sloping ATC. Remember, it's the ATC, not the total cost curve, the average total cost curve that is downward sloping. If ATC is downward sloping, MC has to be below ATC. Okay. Now, I would also take note, if ATC is downward sloping, it's also economies of scale. As output is increasing, average total cost is decreasing, which is the definition of economies of scale. So in a natural monopoly, you have a single firm can produce the entire market quantity than several firms. You have a downward sloping ATC curve, okay, due to huge fixed costs. If the ATC is downward sloping, MC has to be below it. And if ATC is downward sloping, it is showing economies of scale, because as output increases, average total costs decrease. Don't get confused. They're going to try to put like it's downward sloping, total cost. No, total cost doesn't decrease. Average total cost decreases. Okay. And there is what would happen if they were splitting the cost. If there were two firms, it would cost us like say $80 a month in electricity. But with the one firm, because they have all 1,000 customers, they could bring the average total cost down. All right. Then monopoly versus perfect competition. So I'm going to go monopoly first, then perfect competition. Monopoly, price maker. Perfect competition, price taker. Now, I also have to say, in doing the graphs, a lot of people didn't take the MC equals MR up to demand. So just remember that tomorrow, if they ask you the price, well, this is a competitive firm. Let me see, do I have the monopoly on the next one? Yeah. Well, this is MC going across. It's MC equals MR up to demand. Okay. So we got price maker versus price taker. We got downward sloping demand here compared to perfectly elastic in perfect competition. We have no close substitutes in a monopoly. In perfect competition, we have many substitutes. In a monopoly, you have to reduce price to sell more, reduce price to sell more, and in perfect competition, it is the same price. A monopoly can make money in the long run, perfect competition, zero economic profits. So monopolies, price makers, downward demand curve, no close substitutes, reduce price to sell more, economic profits in the long run. Perfect competition, price taker, perfectly elastic, many substitutes, same price, zero economic profits in the long run. Okay. And again, there is your MC equals MR up to the price. Okay. And I'd say like 10 people got that wrong out of 100. I mean, it's only 10%, but that if they ask you price or quantity, I want to make sure we get that right. Okay, monopoly revenue. Total revenue is price times quantity. Total revenue is price times quantity. Again, they have to lower price to sell more. And I'd be aware, again, price is greater than MR equals MC. Okay. Profit maximizer is the next thing, is MC equals MR. You take it up to the price. Let's see. All right. There is, my monopoly graph, and I just want to see. All right. So I do MC equals MR up to the price, and then I take it down to the ATC and across, and that's my profit box. If I was losing money, I just take the price up to the ATC and across. Now, with a profit maximizer, up to the demand curve, down the MC, and from the, back to the profit maximizer is weight loss. So let me just try that. This is weight loss in here. This triangle. Why is this not working? But it's in this triangle. Above the price, below demand would be consumer surplus. This is just eating very good, very well. And then below the price and above the MC would be producer surplus. Okay. This is allocative efficiency where MC crosses demand. Okay. It would also be how a perfectly competitive firm would be. All right. Let's have here. Okay. Now, just on this one, I just want to, because it's still MC equals MR, demand, there's your price, and quantity, okay? And that I get, because I just want to show dead weight loss here, because it's kind of a little different. I know it's not letting me write. All right, if I take MC equals MR, the demand curve, down the demand curve to the MC, that triangle in here, you could see my eraser, which I don't want, moving around. That's dead weight loss. Above PM, below demand is consumer surplus. Below PM and above MC, and this is producer surplus. Okay. And they're just using this as an example of patent. Okay. All right. And if the patent expires, the becomes competitive, it would be where MC crosses demand after the patent expires. Okay. All right. I showed you dead weight loss, but they're going to show it here. There is dead weight loss. MC equals MR up to demand, down the MC. Okay. Okay. Now, price discrimination. The big thing in price discrimination is it's the business of selling the same good at different prices. The business of selling the same good at different prices. The difference, the business of selling the same, and think of college and how 10 of us could go to the same college and pay a different price. Now, what does price discrimination do? It increases profits, it increases quantity, increases profit, increases quantity. No consumer surplus, no dead weight loss. In price discrimination, MR folds into demand. So you'd go where demand, if demand, you got Mr. Darp now, so it would be MR equals MC. And let's see, did they? All right. Now, in price discrimination, where MR would fold into demand, you see where MR, where Mr. Darp now, and that's your new quantity. Okay. Now, remember, everything like is the profit box. What's the other good shot? And there is your profit box. So profits are really big. Yeah. And what you need to know about antitrust laws is really that they're there to promote competition. Now, I don't know, do I have this graph? Let's see, do we have the graph? Just know they're to promote competition. Right. You're not going to be responsible for the graph. The graph I'm talking about is like that, the natural monopoly graph where you'd have socially optimal, fair return, but that was not in this chapter. So you won't be responsible for it on the quiz. All right, I'm gonna quiz up, and then I'll ask you: do you have any questions? Or maybe okay.
Mr. Bressler,
Yeah,
when is that like when do we like know like the MC is like that like horizontal line?
I mean, they would have to give it to you like that. They
Mhm.
won't. Okay.
And then can you explain again why when the ATC is downward sloping, the MC is like less below
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Could be right here, KG, on the first question. So I could just look at it here. All right. If ATC is downward sloping, and that's the average total cost, for it to come down, the marginal cost, which is the cost of the next unit, has to be lower. So just think of your grades. If your grades are 90, the only way it could go down is if your next test is under 90. And that's so if your average grades are going from 90 to 89 to 88 to 87 to 86, it's going to be pulling your total average down. So MC has to be below ATC to pull the average down. Now, in this figure 15.1, you know it's a natural monopoly because ATC is downward sloping. You know it's economies of scale because ATC is downward sloping. And you know that this monopoly would better serve the community than 2 or 3 firms. Did that help you, KJ?
Yeah, that helped a lot. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on anything or the practice quiz or anything else?
Mr. Bressler,
Yes.
can you go over like how those tables, what other questions they could ask us with the tables given? I know you mentioned that those would be on the quiz.
Yeah. All right. I will, and then someone wanted 7 and 10. Let's see which is right. So let's see what 7 is, and then I'll go over the tables. Okay. Firms okay. So a monopoly's firms maximizes its profits. If it's maximizing its profits, I know MC equals MR. If its marginal revenue is 30, then I know its marginal costs are 30 because MC equals MR. Anthony, did that make sense to you? I think you asked it. Someone asked it in the chat. Anthony, does that make sense why it's 30? I assume it does. What I would look at scenario 15.2 is be able to figure out the profit. So like if I wanted to figure out total revenue, which is price times quantity, is this 7? It would be the price is 60 because average DARP, demand equals average revenue equals price. So it'd be 60 times 500, and the total cost would be 500 times 34. And whatever that equals would be the profits. So, I mean, they could ask you the price, which is average revenue. They could ask you the profits, which is, total revenue, price times quantity, 60 times 500 times total cost, which is 500 times 34, minus that. Okay. Now, all right. I would fill out table 15. Let me see what's in the chat, and then I'll get back. Okay. I owe people 6 and 10, and I will get to that. I would know how to fill out this table. So, all right. First of all, average revenue is equal to price. If I could figure out, so second one, the price is 32 because the average revenue is 32. Okay. The price is 35, average revenue is 35, and marginal revenue is 35 minus 0. That would be 35. So this would be 32. Then you have 29 times 23 is 87. 87 minus 64 would give me 23 for my marginal revenue. I'd fill out this whole chart. All right. Now, what could they asked, what is the marginal revenue for the 6th unit? All right. They could ask the marginal revenue for anything. But I'd also, let's just look at this. How about if marginal cost was 18? How many units would you produce? Well, the marginal revenue for the second one is 29. And I think we said for the third one is 23. It's greater than 18. Fourth one is 17. All right. That isn't greater than 18. So I'm going to stop at 3. They could also ask you something like that. They could give you a marginal cost and ask you how many units to produce. And then any of the blanks they could ask you to fill in. And look, if you do it, the price drops by 3 for each one. And I think the marginal revenue drops by 6 for each one. So they're not hard to fill out. Okay. I would just make sure. All right. Does anyone have a question on how to find anything on that chart?
So
I'd
you
be
said
glad to-
if they give you a marginal cost, you just look for the one that's like, it's the one where it's like for the 17, like you would go until it is greater than, but not like,
Right. Like the marginal revenue, Ben, has to be greater than the marginal cost. So if they give you 18, there is no 18 equals 18. So I'm going to go to 21, which is the third one. That's greater than 18. The fourth one, if the marginal cost is 18 and the marginal revenue is 17, I'd be losing money. I'm not going to make the fourth. So I'm going to stop at the third.
thank you.
And Mr.
Okay.
Kessler, how would you find the total revenue again?
Price times quantity.
Thank you.
Mr.
Now-
Professor,
Yeah.
can you explain how in like for the second one on that chart, how is marginal revenue 29?
Okay, because it's 64 minus 35. Look at total revenue, Calden. It's 65 minus 35. 64 minus 35.
Okay.
Okay? And if you fill in the total revenues, that's how you'll get your
Wait, but
margin.
I thought average revenue was equal to the price.
It is. I thought you asked me about
No,
marginal.
for two. So what I'm saying is you said that so wait. So can you repeat what you said again? You said that it's to find the marginal revenue is what?
It would be the change in total revenue. So 64 minus 35 gives you 29.
Okay. Okay,
And
thanks.
the average revenue equals price. So the price would be 32.
Okay.
Okay. And then the average revenue for the third one would be 29 because the price is 29. And the price times the quantity will give you the total revenue. Okay. And then just like look at number 7. If the marginal revenue is -1, then total revenue has to be like 119 because it's got to be 120, 119 minus 120 will give you -1.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's that chart. Someone wanted 6. I'm going to just scroll up here for 6 for a second. Profit okay. So I think the key here, because these curves are like crazy. C is the marginal cost curve. C is the marginal cost curve. D is the average total cost curve. A is demand and B is MR. So if I look at MC equals MR, I take that up, looks like P3 to me. So that should be the answer. Someone asked that. Does that make sense to them now?
Yeah, I just thought like curve D was the MC.
Yeah. Okay. You got that now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I would also look in this graph. If I take it up where MC equals MR, hold it, is MC equals MR, which is here, the P3 or P4?
Should it?
It's P4.
It is P4. It is
Yeah.
P4. So also be wary of them asking you what the profit would be. So it would be P4. Now I got to take it down to the ATC minus P1. And again, my eyes are really bad. Would that be times Q3? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It's on that line.
Yeah.
So beware of them asking the profit like that. Okay. All right. Let's look at the other chart just to see what that one's about. Okay. So the first thing I would do is do the marginal cost, which is 140 minus 100 is 40. 184 minus 140 is 44. 230 minus 184 is 46. And the last one's 50 there. And I guess there's others on the next page. then total revenue is price times quantity. So the first one is 160. The marginal revenue is 160 minus 0. The second one is 300. The marginal revenue is 300 minus 160, which is 140. The third one is 420. 420 minus 300 is 120. Now, there's a couple of things here. One, how do I find fixed cost? I look at the 0, and if total cost is 100, my fixed cost is 100. All right, so that's fixed cost. That's 100. The second thing, I'd be, can they ask me about the average revenue? Yeah, the average revenue is the same as the price, so they could ask me that. I would find where the profit maximizer is on this. All right, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, in case they ask at what unit is the highest profit. So you don't have to go through and figure, for the second one, 300 minus 1. So you don't have to go through them all, figure out where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. And if you know where the profit maximizer is, that's going to be the highest profit. That's it, besides asking like, what's the marginal revenue for the fourth or different workers there. Now, let me see what they did ask here. I asked, what's the average revenue? Well, the average revenue is the same as the price. So for 7, it's 100. All right. The total revenue there would be 700. And the marginal revenue would be 660 minus that would be 40.
Mr. Bessler,
Yeah.
you said for that, I know it's like not in the thing, but like, how would you find like the fixed cost?
If I look at 0 kg,
Yeah.
that means I sold no units, so I have no variable cost. But the total cost is 100. It has to be fixed.
Oh, it needs to be that. And then you said, how would you find the profit maximizer? Maximizer.
If you figure out all these marginal costs,
Yeah.
and then you figure out where the marginal revenue on the right equals the marginal cost.
Oh yeah, because MR equals it. Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. And again, like here, what is the average revenue? That's like a Mr. Dark, right? I mean, just the dark. You need to know that. Then they ask, what is the total variable cost? Well, if I know my fixed is 100, so 395 minus 100 is 295. So that's my variable. And someone asked for number 10, and that's how I would find out number 10.
Can you go over 11?
Yeah. I didn't make this any harder, even though Ben told me I should. All right, if a monopoly firm is if it's perfectly price discriminating, MR is going to fold into demand, so demand's going to equal MR. But they're not asking that. They're asking consumer surplus, price discrimination called, and there is no consumer surplus. There's no deadweight loss.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
0.
So 0, okay.
And that's because every consumer is paying what they're willing to pay. All right. So let's see. I want to look at any of these.
Wait, I have one more question on that. If
Yeah,
we were to
sure.
ask to find the producer surplus, how would I do that?
They wouldn't ask you that. You don't
Okay,
have
okay.
to know
All
that.
right.
Okay. But let's see what they could ask. They could ask like the price and quantity if it didn't price discriminate, and I think it's 25 and 200, but it's where MR equals MC, which is very hard for me to see. They could ask the deadweight loss on a regular monopoly. They could ask for consumer surplus, which would it be 25 here? MC equals MR?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be consumer surplus would be above the price, below demand. So they could ask questions like that. Like they could ask you the quantity if it price discriminates, which would be where demand crosses MC, which would be 400. And then they could ask you regular monopoly questions, you know, if it doesn't price discriminate where MR equals MC, what's the price, what's the quantity, and stuff like that. Trying that. And all right, let me check the chat. There's a question in there. What is the biggest mistake you see people make on this quiz? The easiest mistake is they forget the profit maximizer up to demand. I would say it's probably not doing the tables and getting those questions wrong, even though they're there. So I would make sure I could do those tables. Yeah. I mean, I think like these graphs are going to be either the same or very similar. So like, you know, if you know everything on the graphs, which is really price, quantity, consumer surplus, deadweight loss, profit box. Price, quantity, consumer surplus, deadweight loss, profit box. I would know that on every graph. Okay. And it's the same. It's, you know, it doesn't change. It's just the letters might change. Anything else? And I would say, again, Ethan, and I've said this before, but I would say, like, if there's a question you don't know tomorrow, that's okay you should ask me. However, everything else that you don't have a question for, you should be able to explain to me like I don't know. That's how well you should have it. Okay. Any other questions people have? Okay, I will be around the ARC at least half of period 1, the second half. Sometimes we have a meeting. Period 2 and period 3. And I'll be in my room at 7:45 to go over anything. Okay? Oh, question in the chat. Thank you. Thank you. Okay? And yeah, I would watch the breakdown and take notes on that. Okay. All right. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.